Day with the Tampa St. Pete Sports Connection, Saturdays from 12 to 2 on the TAN Talk family of stations.
Hey everybody, this is Pastor Marsha McAllister from Beacon of Hope Ministries. We want you to join us on Sunday afternoons at 3 o'clock on this radio station for our 2-hour show, talking to you about the Word of God, giving you great contemporary music, some lively chat, and some food for thought. You'll be encouraged to know how very much God loves you and how He has a plan for your life. Join us this coming Sunday at 3 o'clock on Living the Good Life.
This is the TAN Talk Radio Network.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. Well, you keep me all your loving and you hurt loving. All your hugs and kisses and your money to hell. You know you love me, baby. Will you tell me maybe that someday? Well, I'll be good. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die.
Oh yeah, a little bit of Buddy Holly there. Good old Buddy. Wish we had him around these days, because that'll be the day. Good morning and welcome to Freedom Works, the Paul Molloy Show. I am Paul Molloy, and along with my buddy and my partner, Big Ed Davis, we thank you for joining us on this Wednesday, September the 21st. You know that this is the beginning of the fall season? September 21st. Yep. We're falling out of summer and into the fall. I don't know what that means other than it feels a little bit better outside, at least in the Tampa Bay area.
It is 2 degrees cooler.
Well, there you go. So it's a little bit cooler. See, Ed has verified this. Anyway, we got a lot going on today. We're going to be talking in a few minutes with Weifeng Zhang. He's an old friend, had him on before, from the Mercatus Center. He's an expert on what's going on in what we might call the Far East. And we're going to talk about President Biden's announcement, 60 Minutes on Sunday, that the U.S. will defend Taiwan if mainland China attacks. He said it, no ifs, ands, or buts, only to have his aides walk the whole thing back. Where have we heard that before? So we'll talk with Weifeng about it. And Vladimir Putin says that his threats about nuclear weapon use is not a bluff. Is not a bluff. That is a scary scenario. We are going to look into that ominous warning. And finally, the ongoing southern border crisis is now taking stage. I mean, after all this time, even the mainstream media cannot ignore it, much to the chagrin of the Democrats. We are going to take a look at how it may drastically alter the November elections. So stay tuned for that as well. And finally, our ultimate top 10. For those of you that listened to our last show, we gave you the best free speech environments in college, the colleges with the best free speech. So today, the top 10 colleges with the worst free speech. The worst. Stay tuned for that as well. By the way, don't forget, preceding our show, Tim Price and Company, Senior Voice America. Actually, they're on Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Aren't they a great show? I love listening to them. I hope you listen to them. Monday through Friday here on the TAN Talk Radio Network. Okay. So I guess if you beat a pan or you say the sky is falling enough times, people start to ignore you. At first, when you start beating on the pan, they're going to look. But if you keep beating on the pan, they're going to finally stop looking. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning Western countries that his country's nuclear threats are not a bluff. Now, we have heard that many times before. It does not even make sometimes a mainstream headline anymore when people say that from other countries. But we got a Ukrainian war going on, And we got this guy who's becoming desperate. Let's be honest, Vladimir Putin is becoming desperate. The war in the Ukraine is not going well for Russia. And back home, people are starting to mumble and grumble. Have you noticed or read all these people that have been mumbling and grumbling? A whole bunch of them have taken their own lives all of a sudden. Have you seen all the suicides? Not seen them. Have you heard about all the suicides going on in Russia right now? Well, they're not suicides. There's a lot of paranoia going on there. So this guy, who is at the top of the food chain, you might say, in Russia, is now rattling his chains about nuclear weapons. He is accusing Western countries of resorting to what he calls nuclear blackmail, despite the fact that there are no NATO countries threatening any nuclear weapons. So we gotta listen to this guy, because at some point he may use one. At some point he may get upset with what's going on in Ukraine, and maybe he'll drop one right in the middle of Kyiv. Or maybe one of these countries like Denmark that are border countries or close to Russia that are now wanting to go and join NATO. You never know what this guy is going to do. Here's what he said in an address today. To those who allow themselves such statements as what NATO had said about nuclear blackmail regarding Russia, I want to remind you that our country has various means of destruction, and for separate components and more modern than those of NATO countries. So in other words, he's, mine's bigger than yours here. So you got to worry about a guy like that. You really do. In the meantime, what is going on at the border, and what is going on with the transport of illegal immigrants or migrants or asylum seekers or whatever the term is these days, that has to do with people that have crossed the border and are not citizens and are not waiting patiently to come into our country. They've crossed over, all right? Well, Biden was questioned. He never seems to want to take a question. Has he ever gone to the southern border? He has never gone to the southern border in his entire political life. It is almost impossible to spend the number of years he has in Washington as a politician and never have gone to the southern border. He was 8 years vice president, never went to the border. All those years before that in Congress, never went to the border. Biden said yesterday, listen to this, that it is not rational to send migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border back to their home countries like Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. A reporter asked him why the border is more overwhelmed on your watch. And here's what he said. Because there are 3 countries. There are fewer and fewer immigrants coming from Central America than from Mexico. It's a totally different circumstance. Now, I want to ask you this. What the hell does he mean by that? The question was, why is the border more overwhelmed on your watch? And he picks out 3 countries. And he says, because there are fewer and fewer immigrants coming from the Central America. I'm sorry, I don't think I can understand what the rationality is for his response. He says, what's on my watch now is Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. And the ability to send them back to those states is not rational. What is he talking about? They're asking, why is the overwhelming number of people coming over on your watch? He didn't answer the question. But that's the way it goes, I guess, in his fantasy world. When I was watching him, Ed, on 60 Minutes, I know you didn't watch. You should have watched. And I know that they edited. You know how they edit these interviews on 60 Minutes? They'll cut things out, and then they splice together, and it makes it sound like there's an immediate response to a question, just exactly the way you're hearing it. That's not always the case. Even when they did that, This guy does not sound completely in control of his faculties. And he was asked by that guy that did the interview to the effect that some people say that you might not be mentally up to the job. he answered it by the way he answered the question was pretty much reinforcing the fact that he doesn't have the mental capacity to. He was responding in a strange way, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, this is what we got. This is what we got to worry about right now in this country. And finally, I think the chickens are coming home to roost a little bit as we get closer to the November elections. Anyway, we are going to take our break. When we come back, speaking about Joe Biden and his responses, we're going to talk with Weifeng Zhang of the Mercatus Center about Biden's 60 Minutes response on Taiwan, that we will defend Taiwan in case of a mainland nuclear attack by China.
Come on, let me show you where it's at. Come on, let me show you where it's at. Come on, let me show you where it's at. The name of the place, I like it like that.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Listen to the latest pet trends with benefits on the Pet Buzz every Saturday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Join pet trendologist Charlotte Reed and veterinarian Dr. Michael Fleck as they talk all things pets. From animal health and wellness, money-saving tips, celebrity gossip, breaking news, and more. Their expert guests are in the know and in the now. To learn more about this unique program and its hosts, tune into the show on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Caregivers find the support they need on Connecting Caregivers Radio with Linda Burhans, the gal who cares for the caregiver. Heard every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m., Linda and her caring and knowledgeable guests will bring you education, information, and resources, as well as a shoulder for caregivers. That's Connecting Caregivers Radio with Linda Burhans, the gal who cares for the caregiver, where you can find help and hope every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hey, we're back. Freedom Works on a Wednesday. Hey, we're very glad to be back. We've had a lot of technical difficulties, folks. And thanks to Ed and a whole bunch of other people here, we're trying to remedy them and get everything back to normal operating order. And we appreciate your patience. And we are delighted to have back a real, I think a real interesting gentleman. His name is Weifeng Zhang. He is a senior research fellow at George Mason University's Mercatus Center, and he's the guy we go to when it comes to what's going on regarding China, North Korea, and a lot of the things that are going on in the Far East. Weifeng, welcome back to Freedom Works. I do not hear anything. No, I'm going to hang on here and make sure we got our buddy on the line. Can you hear us, Weifeng? I'm not hearing anything, so I'll hang on for just one moment because we got to have a conversation. Weifeng, I'm going to apologize. Apparently, I know you're there. Apparently, we're not able to hear you. Is that the case, Ed, or do we have? Okay, so let's do this. Weifeng, with our apologies, I'm going to ask if you might be available. And even though you can't hear me, I'm going to ask in advance that we might be able to have you on this Friday, and we'll talk about this. But right now, unless we can get our little sound up and running, and then we'll call you back this show, let us say adieu and apologize to you, and we'll get this thing figured out as quickly as we can. All right, then. What we were going to talk about with Weifeng Zhang was the flip-flop on what's going on with the Biden administration and the island of Taiwan. On Sunday, during 60 Minutes, Biden said that U.S. forces would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion. Now, this is the fourth time that Biden has committed the U.S. to defending Taiwan against a Chinese invasion, only to have his aides walk it back. So what is going on? That's kind of scary that we can't even understand what we're going to do in the event of an attack by China. So it's just, I guess, one more thing about what President Biden represents right now when it comes to the presidency. We just don't seem to have a clear understanding of and maybe he doesn't either, of what our policy is when it comes to countries, quite frankly, like China, like North Korea, like Russia. Look at Iran. Look at Iran and how we are not dealing with the nuclear threat there. Many people think Iran is the most dangerous country. I mean, right now, the spotlight might be on Russia because of the Ukrainian war. But maybe that's not so good because maybe we're taking our eye off the real ball, and that's Iran and what is going on there. It's really kind of a scary scenario right now. You wonder if there's anybody in charge in the White House. The main function of the President of the United States, the main thing he's supposed to be doing to the subordination of everything else, is being the commander-in-chief and defending our country. That's the main thing he's supposed to be doing. Not wandering around London attending a funeral for the Queen or wandering around his Martha's Vineyard estate or wandering around wherever he wanders around. He needs to understand what's going on the world front and protect our country. And obviously the border situation itself might be the biggest threat that we have right now to the integrity and security of our country. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has flown, about 50 people that were illegals into Martha's Vineyard, and then immediately the outrage. And all of a sudden, now we get the mainstream media getting their feathers ruffled, and now they're talking about it. But they're not talking about it and pointing how many people are crossing the border illegally. They're talking about it because it's upsetting the people in Martha's Vineyard and in Massachusetts. And they're now thinking of ways of shutting down DeSantis from sending these people. When President Biden, in the middle of the night,
I want to go.
Yeah.
I've never been to Martha's Vineyard. Free trip, free
Can
room
I go
and board.
with you? Maybe we can, who is it? Oh, President Obama's got space. We can be in the coach house. The coach house is huge. He's got a $16 million, I think, estate on Martha's Vineyard. Ever seen an aerial shot of his property? I mean, it looks like it looks like almost like a castle on a lot of. It almost looks like an aerial shot of Windsor Castle.
Well, it's got to be big if you need an aerial shot.
It's huge. There's room for you and me and a whole bunch of other
drive-by.
people. Yeah, we wouldn't even have to pack a lunch. We wouldn't. The servants would give us a meal. Well, anyway, so I mean, this is so funny. I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't so maddening. Well, all these people are pouring in across the southern border and overwhelming Texas and El Paso and all of these areas and in Arizona.
And now we got people worried about what tax bracket we drop them off at.
So 50 people show up in Martha's Vineyard where everybody there is a millionaire, right? Can you imagine if they really cared how well those 50 people, that would be like striking a gold vein in a mine for those 50 people. If the people in Martha's Vineyard in general really cared about them, it just boggles the mind. There is no argument that a Democrat can make against Ron DeSantis, in my opinion, with a straight face, without being labeled a hypocrite. Didn't Biden drop? I don't know how many people has Biden dropped off via airplanes. He started that thing, did he not? Am I wrong?
Well, that was being done in the middle of the night, and,
Yes.
and
They were even dropping them off here in Florida, right?
yeah, I actually witnessed one unloading of a busload.
Yeah, I remember
Right
you
here in
talking about
Clearwater.
that. So, how can they? And there's now some nutty sheriff, I think it's in the El Paso area of Texas, that wants to sue Biden. I mean, he wants to sue DeSantis.
DeSantis, yeah.
He's a Democrat, and when he was asked what are the charges, he couldn't come up with a specific. He couldn't come up with a specific charge, but he said, "Well, we got to sue him." It boggles the mind. And this guy is supposedly a guy, right at where the crisis is. This guy that wants to sue DeSantis, he can see all of these people pouring in. What? How many people died in the back of a truck? Was it 50 or something?
Yes, it was.
More people died in the back of that truck than went to the Martha's Vineyard. I think it was like 55 people that died in the back of a truck. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And they're concerned about the 50 people that went to Martha's Vineyard. Are we in the Alice in Wonderland phase of our country?
The thing is, when they got dropped off when they got off that bus, or actually they were flown up there, they almost, the clothing they were wearing, they almost fit right in. They were all wearing
They're
new
better dressed
clothes.
than I am.
Yeah,
which isn't saying much.
I told you I saw one with a Tommy Hilfiger shirt. And I don't even have one of those.
And sunglasses, and they're how about they all have iPads in their hand, right?
Cell phones. Yep.
What? By the way, if you get in line and cross the border, do they give that to you? Here's your Tommy Hilfiger shirt, and here's your iPad phone. I mean, how does that work? What color do you want? What color shirt and what color phone do you want? Well, I kind of like the yellow shirt, and give me the green phone. I think yellow and green go well together.
I'm waiting for a news organization. It's probably going to be Fox to go out, sit down some of these people that have been flown in or bussed in and ask them what the process was. Did you go right through? Did you take any kind of a medical test? Well, how much money were you handed? Stuff like that.
Test. Yeah. I mean, first of all, there's nothing that anybody is doing to check them for any kind of disease. We know that. And even if they checked every single one of the ones they caught, for every one that they catch, how many go through and they don't catch? There's no sense to it. The Democrats cannot come up. I have never heard them come up with a rational and logical explanation for why they are not doing more to control people entering our country illegally. None. And this is why I think, and a lot of people think, not just me, that in November, that border crisis is going to be much more important than people right now might be giving it credit for. Now, we are worried about the economy, and we're worried about inflation. We're worried about products that are not on the shelves. We're worried about going to the gas pump and spending several dollars more now per gallon than we used to. So all of that we understand. But I think that people, when it comes to the president or the Congress or anything going on in Washington, relate the border crisis to a bigger, more important issue. Because we are worried about terrorism. We are worried about fentanyl. We are worried about how many people have died trying to cross the border, innocent people. We are worried about all of the things that are going on with the runners that are trying to get these people across, and the blackmailing and all of the horrible things that happen when people that are desperate are trying to get to another country.
Have you noticed that the subject of gun control has been pushed way back on the back burner, and
Yes.
nobody's even talking about that? because when you take the polls that are out there, people are talking about the things that they want fixed most is the economy with inflation, gas prices, the border and stuff like that. They're not really worried about gun control or the problems that we've had in schools. That's all of a sudden is not an issue now.
That's right. It's become a secondary issue. It's like the war in Ukraine. When was the last time you heard anything about the war in Ukraine? By the way, we are going to talk a little. We're going to take our break now. We are going to talk about what's going on, and is Putin losing in the Ukraine? After we come back, we're going to take a short break, and we will be back on Freedom Works.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hey, this is Stephen Karras, psychologist and host of the Chapters Wrap Live. Each live show will bring on top-notch guests from the nonprofit world. We are the advocacy show that provides a platform for other advocates. So please tune in on your drive home from work to share your voice. The Chapters Wrap, where you and diversity meet one chapter at a time.
Listen to Kicking Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb at 5, Voices for Change at 6, Reach Out with Ray and Steve at 7, and the Chapters Wrap at 8, Wednesdays, here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
What's the buzz in Tampa Bay? Senior Voice America Radio, a unique morning variety program delivering the latest commentary on politics by host and political analyst Tim Bryce and the up-to-minute happenings of Wall Street. Beyond politics and finance, they scale the scholar's rampart by including topics on religion and nutrition with thought-provoking guests and interviews. Tune in every weekday from 8 to 10 a.m. on this Tan Talk station. Senior Voice America, serving our nation's seasoned citizens for over 4 decades.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Okay, we are back. Freedom Works. Hey, this is the this is the first day of fall. At some point today, the 21st, we went from summer to fall. Tomorrow's the first full day of fall. But just so you know, and it is a little bit cooler, Ed, just like you said outside, it is feeling a little bit better. I want to talk a little bit about what the Fed is doing. Now, inflation, as we all know, is taking center stage. We all feel it, right? We feel it every time we go to the grocery store now. Well, we feel it wherever we go and spend any money. I don't care where it is. Whether you're going to the gas station, the grocery store, you got to go buy some clothes, whatever it is, everything's more expensive. We know that. The Federal Reserve is trying to stop people from spending money because they are raising interest rates. When you raise interest rates, it makes everything else more expensive. That's just the way things are. When you raise interest rates, people don't borrow as much because the cost of paying back the borrowing is raised. And that is an attempt to stop the concept of too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's what causes inflation. If you understand basic economics, you know that if you got a bunch of people that want your product and they're waving money in front of you, you're going to raise the cost because you can get away with it because you got people that are competing for the few products that are available. So what does the Fed do? Well, we see that there are not enough products that are available in this country right now. And that means that it is raising the cost of every one of the things that are available. So we have got to slow down the availability, or we've got to slow down the dollars that are out there. So we will make it harder for people to get more dollars or borrow more dollars by raising interest rates. So therefore, as an example, when people are considering buying somebody else's car or their home and they go to borrow money and they find out now that the cost of borrowing that money is raised quite noticeably, they have second thoughts about doing it. So the purchase of the home is nullified. Purchase of the car is nullified. The purchase of going to college because the tuition has interest rates raised in the free market, you slow that down too. So that's just the way things work. So having said that, the Federal Reserve is set to hike interest rates again this week. The question is how much? The question is how much. From what I understand, they probably are going to do it by raising the interest rate 3/4 of a point, which means which would be a 75 basis point rate hike. A full point would have been a 100 basis point rate hike, but they call it a 75 basis point rate hike. And if that doesn't sound like a lot to you, it's a lot. It's a lot. It affects the number of people that will come and borrow money. Anybody. And so that's what they're going to do. It might even be a full 1% hike in the interest rate. We'll see where that stands. So we'll see. But Wall Street apparently is more focused on what policymakers' signals could come next in the fight on inflation. The projections are expected to show when the Fed releases its forecasts since June. They are now going to release their forecasts in September. Projections are expected to show an even more aggressive path of interest rate hikes that will likely chip away at economic growth and cause the unemployment rate to climb higher. So why are they doing this? Because they're trying to avoid a recession. That's why they're doing this. But people like Rand Paul, and frankly, I agree with them, would suggest that the best thing that we can do to get the waters to calm again and to get things working again is to not do anything, not to artificially raise or lower the cost of borrowing. The Federal Reserve should not be doing that. In fact, the question is whether or not we really need a Federal Reserve. If you go back in your history, you will find that there were two things that prior to 1913 we did not have in this country. One was a Federal Reserve, and the other was, believe it or not, we had no federal income tax. Did you know that, Ed? We had no federal income tax before 1913. We had it off and on, but it was only in an emergency when the federal government was taxing its citizens. So before 1913, this country, which was becoming the greatest country in the world, think about it, the Industrial Revolution was going on, remember? We don't remember, but from history books, during the 1800s, we were becoming the greatest country in the world. We were inventing everything. And we were doing it without a federal income tax.
So you must have enjoyed that.
And I knew that was coming. So here's the deal. In 1913, we decided to have a federal income tax, right? Did you know how that worked? There was a bunch of bankers that got together, or not, that was on the Federal Reserve. But on the federal income tax, I don't know what the excuse was, but why was it that we needed one at that point? The country was doing fine. You know how the federal government got its money? It got its money from tariffs.
Right.
They would tax imports coming into our country. Now, that was also good, if you think about it, in the sense that by taxing imports, it was a greater incentive for people to buy a product that was made in our country. So it was working in two different ways.
Well, that's something Trump was trying to do.
So the question is, we all of a sudden, in 1913, we established an income tax. And the government started liking that money that was coming in. It allowed them to have more money. It allowed the politicians that were in Congress to have more money. It allowed them to control more money. It allowed them to gain in power. Do you see the insidious nature of all of that? It's really scary if you think about it.
What do you think is the biggest tax What do you think is the biggest tax the government's getting right now from people? Is it income tax, gas tax, what?
That's a good question. I would guess. I don't know, but I would guess.
I mean, a federal gas tax is probably at least 50 cents a gallon?
Yeah, the federal gas tax is imposed on every state alongside the state gas tax, and I don't know what that amount is. I'm going to guess it's something like 10 cents a gallon, maybe. We have to look that up. What is the federal gas tax? And that is one of the biggest sources of revenue. I agree with you on that. I was thinking that maybe their greatest source of income might just be when they tax individuals. We've got how many 100 million people that pay income tax? I mean, if you totaled it, that might be number one, but I am not sure. But the other thing was, in 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve. The thing that actually involved a group of bankers getting together. They actually went to a little island off the coast of Georgia. I can't remember the name of it. And they got together and they figured out that they could control the money supply. But they had to have somebody, the Congress, go along with it. They had to create a banking system that would connect itself to the federal government, because the federal government was, the Treasury Department. One of the jobs of the federal government is to literally print our money, and so they figured out that if they could connect the banking system, the private banking system, because it was all private at that point in 1913. To the federal government, it would be a cash cow of unlimited income. So just think about it. Before that, we didn't have all the banks were working on their own. All the banks were private. And this tied the government into overseeing the money supply of private banks. Now, for those of us that have a libertarian streak in them, we don't need the federal government to step into the private sector and start regulating the flow of money. Because a bank basically is a place, A, where people can store their money safely. That's why there is a bank with vaults and bars and everything else. And B, because they store their money in a secure place, the bank can then not keep all of that money, but they can lend it to other people. And they make money because they charge a rate of interest. But in the free market, with all of the competition going on, it would keep the interest rate low. Because if they wanted to loan money out and have an interest rate where they make money, they would be competing with another free market bank down the street that would also be wanting people to come and borrow money from them. And so now there would be a battle of interest rates. That keeps it low. It's called competition. Why do you need the federal government to step in? Well, these bankers realized that if the federal government, back in 1913, all these magnet bank owners, they realized that if they stepped in and connected the federal government to the free market banking system, that all of a sudden they would become wealthy beyond their dreams. And this is why people like Rand Paul say that we don't need a Federal Reserve, and he questions the integrity of the Federal Reserve. And here's the Federal Reserve. It's about to raise interest rates. Do you see how this shapes everybody all the way down to people like us? When they raise interest rates, everything becomes more expensive. If it becomes more expensive, you don't want to buy it quite as quickly. That's just the way human nature and economics work. So that's what's going to happen. Okay.
By the way, to follow up, The federal gas tax is 18 cents a gallon.
18 cents. I said 10.
The Florida gas tax is 19 cents a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia has no gas tax right now. I don't know if it's been suspended because of the gas situation.
I don't think so.
But this is an easy question.
Mm-hmm.
Who has the highest state gas tax?
The highest gas? Well, obviously California.
51 cents a gallon.
Yep. And you wonder why people are leaving. Okay. We are going to take our break. And when we come back, among other things, we are going to give you the top 10 colleges with the worst free speech environment.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Are you a writer, inventor? Do you have questions about your intellectual property rights? Well, tune in every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 11 o'clock for Joy on Paper. Once a month, I will have a special guest, the writer's legal eagle, Bill Larson of Larson & Larson, who can answer your questions. Protect your valuable work. Email me your questions to patsy.radio@gmail.com and then listen in every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. right here on Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network. That's patsy.radio@gmail.com.
Hey, you new to the area or just want to know about the best hidden gems and upcoming events? Stay tuned. Be Local Buzz with Devin takes you to these places, introduces you to the best businesses, and tells you about upcoming buzz. Preset your radio to Tan Talk 1340 AM or 106.1 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5. That is the Be Local Buzz with Devin on Tan Talk 1340 AM and 106 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5. Looking forward to speaking with you.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hey, we are back for the final segment of Freedom Works here on a Wednesday. We thank you so much for being with us. By the way, we are here, God willing, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, and we hope that you can listen live. But we know you got things to do sometimes between 10 and 11 a.m. So Big Ed puts all our shows on tape in podcast form on our website, which means you can go and listen to any of our shows at any time, at your leisure. Just go to ourfreedomworks.com, O-U-R, ourfreedomworks.com. Look at the podcast button at the top. Click on it. Take your choice. You'll see the top 10. You'll see the guest. All of it. ourfreedomworks.com. All right. Now, the Supreme Court has been so involved in what is going on all of a sudden. We've got what? The Roe versus Wade. We got all kinds of issues. We're going to have some issues about the border crisis that are going to be coming in front of them as well. And how about some of these social media platforms and free speech? Well, conflicting lower court rulings about removing controversial material from social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter and even Google point towards a landmark Supreme Court decision on whether First Amendment free speech protects big tech in censoring free speech. Question is whether or not a private company that is basically a bastion of conversation can decide what conversation you can have and what conversation you cannot have when you are in their forum. And it's a good question. So don't immediately say, oh, well, free speech. Well, wait a second. You're entering their building. There are rules. You know that when you come in, right? So maybe because it's a private company and you've decided to enter their domain, maybe they can set up certain standards. Now, the Supreme Court has to decide whether or not that company, that tech company, can limit what you say when you come in. Now, we know, for instance, let's say this, Ed. Let's say you went to a school board meeting, right? Now, when you enter that building and you go into that room and there are all those people there There are certain things, if you said them, they'd throw you out, correct? For instance, if you got up and you started attacking somebody verbally or started screaming, obscenities, they would shut you down, wouldn't they? You wouldn't be allowed to do that, obviously.
I draw an analogy to somebody who has a private business, and you put on the door, no shoes, no shirt, no service.
Exactly. They have that right.
In other words, they're setting the dress code or whatever.
Yeah, this is the way
and if
we
you
do
don't abide
things.
by it, they have the right not to serve you.
Exactly. And you can go somewhere else, right? Well, if you're going to come into our place, you got to wear shoes. You got to wear a shirt. Okay, fair enough. So maybe you can apply that standard to these tech companies. If you go on their platform, let's say that you want to talk about Hunter Biden, okay, and talk about his computer, and all of a sudden you find that you're being restricted. Well, your first inclination is to be upset. But if you think about it, you go, all right, they set the rules, and apparently you can't talk about Hunter Biden's computer on this particular platform. Therefore, I will exit the platform, and I will go to another platform, if I can find one, that will allow me to talk about Hunter Biden's computer. So that's what's going on. I'm looking at this story. This is from the Washington Post on what looks like is going to be the Supreme Court having to make a decision because there are conflicting lower court rulings about whether or not you can remove controversial material from a platform. Let's see here. Where are they? Governments that say conservative voices are the ones that are most often eliminated by the decisions of tech companies scored a major victory last week when a divided U.S. Court of Appeals in Texas upheld a law that barred companies from removing posts based on political ideology. Now, that particular Court of Appeals is dominated by conservatives, and therefore it's not a surprise. But in some other case, it went the other way. And so this is why when you get two different lower courts that conflict, that's when the issue ultimately will make its way up to the final decision maker, which is the Supreme Court. So that's the way that's going to go. All right. Now, Ed, before we go to our top 10, I want to ask you this. With all the other things that are going on, I have not looked at what our beloved Tampa Bay Rays are doing. Are they still in the hunt to get into the playoffs in baseball?
They're still in it, but they're slipping. I don't know what the deal is. They lost 2 in a row now against the Houston Astros here at home.
Well, Houston's maybe the best team in baseball.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if they're just willing to get into the playoffs and not worried about what seed they are and not using their best players and best pitchers. I don't know.
Are they already technically in the play?
Well, they haven't clinched anything.
They haven't clinched. Okay.
They haven't clinched anything.
Okay. But we're drawing near the end of the season.
And don't forget, now they got the Blue Jays coming up next.
And now, tell me about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what's coming up for them. They have been looking pretty good. They're winning.
Big game this weekend against the Green Bay Packers here at home.
Oh, yeah. That'll be a huge
4:30 kickoff.
Maybe the two most interesting quarterbacks in the NFL, right?
Well, they say that this is going to be a matchup that we probably might not see for a very long time. Two surefire Hall of Famers going at it for the last time.
Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay and Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would pay to see that, and a lot of people will. So that'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, it is sold out, but I would imagine that I would imagine this would be Brady's last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if this would be Aaron Rodgers last year too.
You think so?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
He is starting his last 2 games. he seems a little sluggish. I don't know.
Well, I'm a
see
Bears
drop
fan,
off.
and he was not that sluggish. He figured out a way to beat the Bears again. He always beats the Chicago Bears.
As he says, I own you.
He does own them. He does, as much as I hate to say that. Okay, it's time for our top 10, Ed. You got to get over to the drums. Do the drums work even though we've had technical issues?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're going to give you the top 10 colleges with the worst free speech environments. And this, by the way, comes from a ranking from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. They surveyed nearly 45,000 students from more than 200 colleges. And they came up with a ranking. 100 is perfect free speech on a campus, okay? So keep that in mind. These are the worst, though. Here we go. Number 10. Santa Clara University near San Francisco. Listen to this. Out of 100, 26.5.
Wow.
That's not too good. Number 9. Scripps College. You'd think with the name Scripps, which reminds me of newspapers, there would be some sort of free speech, but it's only 23.65 at Scripps College. All right. Number 8. Pitzer College, Pitzer College, 23.51. Did you go to Pitzer College yet?
No, I got kicked out of there.
Okay. Number 7. And this saddens me. Northwestern University. You'd think that they would be a free speech bastion. No, sir. 23.09 at Northwestern. Number 6. Yale University. 22.65. Number 5. Skidmore College. They're really skidding. 21.51. Number 4. Georgetown. What? A Catholic Georgetown in Washington, D.C., 20.48. Number 3. The Great Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I know you wanted to go there, Ed.
Who is that?
Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Try to say that 5 times when you're sober. It's 18.6 at Rensselaer. Number 2. University of Pennsylvania. What? Isn't that supposed to be sort of a good college? 14.32. And finally, Ed, I know you won't have any idea, but if you can come up with, let's put it this way, if you can give me the right part of the country, I'm going to give you
California?
a gold star. Huh?
California?
Absolutely not.
No, I thought like Berkeley or something.
You think so?
Or weren't they? They were bad there. What was that? The 70s?
Yeah, I thought Berkeley would be on here. They're not on here. It's Columbia.
Oh,
Columbia University. Columbia University is a Ivy League school. I believe it's in the state of New York. And they've got 9.91. If you dare open your mouth and say something they don't like, they throw you into the river with a stone and a chain connected to you. That's not very nice. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. All right, my friends, we thank you for putting up with us today. Hopefully, we're going to even be better on Friday. We're still working to get things 100%. We thank you for your tolerance. And always remember that freedom works.
Deep down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens, the silver log cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good.
WTAN, Clearwater.
FM 106.1.
WDCF, Dade City.
FM 102.3.
WZHR, Zephyrhills.
FM 104.3.
Listen.